Welcome to another episode of the Tower 26 Be Race Ready podcast. I'm Jim Litsky here once again with Coach Gerry Rodriguez. I had to make sure you knew who I was. How's it going, Coach?
I've never seen such a slow, low grade intro from you.
Here's the thing. I know you're beat. You've had a long day. You were up early this morning. I might lose you during this podcast to a nap. So I got to start off right. And if you're gonna fall asleep, I have to make sure everybody knows who I am as opposed to the quote unquote expert.
Well, once you started this, you have that choice. This meeting is being recorded. I almost clicked exit.
Hey, you know what? If there's one guy who could sit here and talk to himself for an hour, because I do it so many times a week, it's me. So I
That
don't know
would
what
be
I would
you.
talk about. We would go in places, dark places that we've never been before, but I can make it happen. This morning, 5:45 to 7:15, every Tuesday and Thursday, I talk to myself for an hour. There's 50 people on the call riding. I'm just talking to myself for an hour. I just maybe have my own morning show.
There is a second career for you, in case you wanted it.
So you bring that up. It's a funny thing because I was in Santa Cruz last week for the race. We had about 40 Tower 26 athletes racing. It was awesome. But the day before the race, I'm walking around. I got more people. You know how I am. I'm very understated. I'm very below the
Very
radar. I don't
shy,
want anybody to know who I am.
very humble.
So I found a pair of Speedos at the Pacific Palisades pool. It's probably some freshmen, right? I forgot my suit and I put this pair of Speedos on because I found in the lost and found. It was probably a 28, size 20, very tight, right? So I'm walking around. And then I realized when I got to Santa Cruz, I didn't bring a suit to wear under my wetsuit. So I put this Speedo on again that I had in my car. And so I put it on and then I take the wetsuit off and I realized I don't have any clothes to change into right now. So I'm walking around in this wetsuit, this Speedo it's small. All right. It's
That's
small.
28,
I'm a
baby.
big, I'm a
Oh,
big man. I'm a big man. And I had a size 28 Speedo on walk around Santa Cruz. I had a gentleman, a lot of people are just tapping. Hey, Jim, love the podcast. Love everything you're doing. Thanks for all you're doing. I had one gentleman from San Diego come up to me, shake my hand. Mind you, I'm in this tiny Speedo. And he says, you know what, Jim, I really appreciate what you and Gerry are doing. I don't miss a podcast. I've listened from the start. My name's Dave. I'm from San Diego. I'm racing tomorrow. I said, Dave, wow, really thanks. I give him a hug. It was kind of awkward in my Speedo giving Dave a hug, but I can't wait to take a photo with you after the race tomorrow. Good luck. We talked. He goes, yeah, I really, really love the information. And I love your odd personality. I love how odd you are. I was like, is that a compliment? What is that?
uh,
Is that good? Is that bad? Does that keep people coming? What is it? What do we do here? What do I
hey,
say?
it's a compliment, so don't even overanalyze it. But odd, that wouldn't be a word I'd use to describe you. But
Maybe accent. Hey, whatever you want. Hey, Dave, you're right. Whatever you think I am, as long as you're listening, you're happy. I love it. We'll have to get Dave on and talk about my odd personality. So, Dave, you want to call in? Call our phone lines are open. Call on in now. We'll get you on live.
we do a whole show about this. I got a lot of material I could add today.
Like, Dave, believe me, we just came off a 2 p.m. call where I showed
Exactly.
all of our 60, 70 athletes who are live on there how odd I am. But Jared, what's new in your world? How's life going? Why are you so tired? Let's talk about you for 1 second. We never really get into the guy that is Gerry Rodriguez.
I think I've been a little more busy than normal, and I think I was excited to coach our workout this morning, and I woke up at about 2:30, and I couldn't get back to sleep. So it was a super early get out of bed thing. Then ran our session, one of our great sessions. I think we're going to talk about it later on in the show, right?
Yep.
And then been nonstop when I got back home for the last 6 hours. So and this is what you have to look forward to. You get a little older, you get tired sooner.
Do they
So I
call it
think
long in the tooth? Is that what they call it when you get a little
it's
long in the
cool.
tooth?
Whatever it is, man. I'm a little
I
over.
don't know.
I
I'm
was
pretty
hoping to
darn.
get a little 30-minute nap before this podcast, but it didn't happen. So in case I doze off, Jim, take the show on, please.
I'm ready to go. I could feel the hour. There's something we could talk about. There's always something we can talk about. But let's get into it. Do you remember what we spoke about last episode?
Hey, last episode I was excited to talk about. I wish we had more time. Was about Olympic performances because I wanted to go over with you, strategy, because it's not one of the things we talk about. So we talked about the different strategies that were deployed, as I observed at least. So this is my filter on what occurred and what I saw at the Olympic Games in a handful of events, and probably the most prominent one being the men's 1,500-meter run on the track versus the men's 1,500-meter swim in the pool, and then the women's marathon. So I think we had some good content to go over. I wish we can get the right license rights or something, so we can actually show that while we're talking about it, so people can see it. But it's real easy. Just go on to Peacock and look at the Olympic results, and they're little clips of all the races next to the results.
And there was some stuff that you want to talk about that maybe might have not been completely accurate. I mean,
Well,
you
yeah,
wanted to like recant some things, but what you have to realize is we're the hosts and what we say is correct. So I know you want to clarify that you might have been wrong here and there, but we're the hosts, buddy. If we
so
say it, it
well,
is.
in our first 50 or 60 podcasts or more, probably, I used to always listen to the podcast after and take notes on all the mistakes I'd be making, and then I just got too tired of writing too much because I realized, God, you didn't do that correctly, and you just want self improvement, right? And then I stopped doing it for probably our last couple of dozen podcasts. Well, gosh, for some reason, I listened to our last podcast a few days ago, and I realized there were two things we talked about, or that I talked about, were definitely wrong. I think you'd asked if the men's 1500 freestyle was the last race, and I said no, it wasn't. I think Katie Ledecky swam after, so I was wrong there. The men's 1500 was after Katie, because Katie was actually cheering on the winner of the men's race. So she was cheering on,
right.
she had already swam. And then I think I said that the winner of the men's mile, the men's 1500, was the only world record, and it wasn't. The 100 freestyle record got broken by the Chinese guy, and I can't believe I forgot that, because he didn't only break the record, he slaughtered the 100-meter freestyle record, a few days prior.
Well,
So
I knew
two
these
big
things.
mistakes.
I wasn't going to say it, but I knew these things. I just want to see if you're going to own up to it. So
I own up to it once it gets pointed out, but when I picked it up myself, I go, "Where was your head while you were talking
you're
about this?"
sleeping.
Because
You're taking
normally
a
I'm
nap.
fairly decent on stats, but
Too busy dialed into our own athletes to worry about that BS.
yeah.
But that brings me to what we're going to talk about this episode. What do we
Okay.
got? What do we got coming up that we've seen on deck? Because it's something I deal with all the time, and we had a great discussion on it earlier in the week. And it's something that we definitely need to go over, whether it's swimming, biking, and running. What was that topic that we're going to talk about?
I think we need to help athletes understand and educate them on how to adhere to coaching schedules of what's prescribed to you,
Mm-hmm.
and the importance of going easy when it's called upon to go easy.
Right. And
It's that
that's
simple.
what we find. I mean, people start to compete in these workouts, especially we're in a group, whether we're on the bike, we're swimming, we're running, you're with a group, and we say, okay, go easy. And all of a sudden they're going at 5K pace, or they're going at their 100 all out pace. And we say it's supposed to be 70% effort. What the hell's going on?
Right, and I could see this happening more, especially on bike rides, where you're with a group of similar ability friends. It's a group of 5 or 6 girls riding, 5 or 6 guys riding, and then you should be at a relatively low effort, and then somebody decides, if somebody feels good and they sort of step up the pace a bit, and then you feel that you need to. Or even, let's say it's 6 people riding and 5 step up the pace, and you go, I don't want to ride alone. So you step up the pace with them, and you've gone outside of the training requirement. And the problem is, as you know, if you do that too frequently, there's a whole lot of cumulative effect of fatigue, right? And that is going to affect and impact other training sessions, and ultimately it will impact race performance. So I felt last week, Jim, we talked about this after Brian, leave the last name out, but had a morning workout. And Brian's one of the athletes I thoroughly enjoy coaching, good friend also. And our session called upon a progressive effort,
Mm-hmm.
right? I don't even remember the specific. Do you have the set in
I can
front of
show
you?
you the set. I'll bring the
Oh,
set
yeah.
up
Why
right
don't you
now.
do
Hold
that?
on. Let me
Yeah,
bring it
let's
up.
do that.
Let me get it right for the
I think
screen.
it was
Let's
6
get it up
times one.
here. It was 150s. Yeah.
Yes, 6
Let's
times 150,
Here it is.
right?
We're going to share it.
Okay.
This is the one we do warm up and the main set. 6 150s. Yep.
Yes. So this set, if you look at the set there, you guys I'll do the audio version so you
Hang on,
can see here.
we're live on Facebook on our page. So if you guys are listening real time and you're watching live on Facebook, feel free to ask questions in the comments. Coach Meg is on there. She's going to relay it to me, and we will answer those questions in real time. So just you see something in here, Gerry or myself says something you want further clarification, or you want us to tell us happy birthday to your cat, write that in the comments, and we'll get it on there. So sorry, go ahead, Gerry.
Yeah, all good. So if you look at the set here, it's broken into 3 components. The first component is 6 swims. In this case, we have it as 150s, but it varied in distance based on ability level. So this is for our level 1 athletes. Level 2 athletes are going 125s. Level 3 athletes are going 100s, and so on. So we scale our workouts according to ability level. So it's 6 times 150, and I'll go into details in a moment. And then we had approximately 6 minutes of high intensity. And then we came back and we did those 6 150s again, and then another 6 minutes of intensity, and then one more time through 6 150s and another 6 minutes-ish of intensity. And to have success in this workout, and by the way, the 6 swims, those 6 150s in this example, or 125s, depending on your level, or 100s, we asked for a prescriptive output of the first 2 at 70, maybe 75% at best. The next 2, 75 to 80%, and the last 2, 80 to 85%. So simply stated, sort of 2 easy, moderate, and then 2 sort of moderate, strong. Okay. And I could explain that in zones if we want to, but people use so many different types of zones that let's stay away from that. And there's a reason for that, for it to be prescribed that way, because we also want the athlete to be able to come back, because we then have 6 minutes of intensity where we were at 90% of maximum heart rate or higher. So it would not be fruitful to, and we're doing this 3 cycles through, right? So 3 reps through. So it wouldn't be fruitful to overswim the 6 reps or override or overrun if it was a running session, to overexert on the 6 reps and go outside of the training zone or training effort or training percentage or training heart rate that's recommended. It's not fruitful. It's not going to be the successful workout that we want the athlete to do, and then the outcome to be achieved. And also, when we go, Jim, outside of efforts we go above efforts, there's a cumulative effect over time, right? So in this particular session, Brian, since we ended up talking to Brian after, on his 6 swims, 2 at 70%, 2 at 75, 2 at 80% as an example, his 6 swims at times are all the same. There's no variance. So he didn't go easy. He didn't go moderate. He sort of went moderate high, and then couldn't go any faster and sustained it. But then when we got to the fast swims, wasn't able to really push those as much as he should have been able to. But importantly, when we're doing these efforts where we're decreasing time or increasing output, it's important to stay within the prescriptive request, right? And I recognize that, especially in group settings, you're swimming in a group workout, running on a track in particular, with your buddies, out on a ride, it is easy to respond to somebody's a little bit of teasing, taunting, fun, breakaway, whatever it may be, right? And to go for it and respond to their moves. But there's a consequence to that, and it's not a positive consequence. So we don't want to, and it's important to stay within the efforts prescribed. So in Brian's case, when he swam, and I'm going off of memory here, 140, 140, 140, 140 on his 6 of those ish, 140, 141s, I think is what he was doing approximately. If he swam 146 and then 143 and then 140 or 148, 144, 138, whatever it may be, he would have done the set appropriately. And then he would also be better prepared to handle the higher intensity, which were just short swims or 25s or 50s at high premium. What are your thoughts on that?
No, if you're just there going at the same speed like a freight train, and you're never varying that for like this, you're not going easy or, quote unquote easy 70% when it's time to go 70%. When you're asking for that 90%, 95 maximum effort, you're never training your body to go any faster. All you're doing is training your body to compete at one speed. So whereas Brian is happy at his 120 pace or whatever it was per 100, he was limiting his output because he was going too hard when he was supposed to be going easy. So then the hard, he was too fatigued and he wasn't able to get out of that comfort zone and really churn the arms over, learning to take his body and his speed to new levels, because he's always going into it with built up fatigue. So we have to be able to really maintain or restrain ourselves when it's time to restrain ourselves so we can get out of that comfort zone, really push the new heights and get faster because that's how you get faster. Otherwise, you're just training yourself to be one speed Joe.
Well, and to your point, training at that sort of threshold effort the entire time yields high fatigue, right? And that, as I mentioned earlier, has a cumulative effect. And then when you get to race day, you can be super flat. Okay. So it is
Hmm.
important to, it's okay. You have the okay of your coaches to go easy. 70% of maximum heart rate is pretty freaking easy, right?
Yeah.
Go easy. Uh, it's okay to swim if you're a 120 per 100 swimmer, or let's make you super fast. If you're a 1 minute per 100 swimmer, sort of pointy end swimming. If you're a 1 minute per 100 swimmer, trust me, those 1 minute per 100 swimmers, because I've swum with a whole bunch of them in my career, right? Lots of them.
Yeah.
Those 1 minute per 100 swimmers, when we were asked to go easy, we're swimming 120. Okay. We're swimming 30% slower than sort of your threshold pace. So we go super easy because it doesn't matter. There's a reason for it. And then you'd go 110, then you'd go a minute, and then you can do a couple of 50 seconds if necessary. But it's necessary to hold back and not feel that you have to cluster your time so tightly. Now there are sets, as you know, where the demand is to cluster
Right.
and swim 10 reps at 140 pace like Brian was doing with less rest, and you're there at your threshold output the entire way. And that set has its purpose. But when we have specific sets like this, it's really important to follow the prescription.
Meg has a question coming from Facebook. It says, Brian, how does effort relate? Brian gave more effort, but he had the same times. How does that relate to what we're talking about?
Maybe it really relates because that could be from also being overtrained. You're putting more effort, but there's nothing is coming. There's no return on it. It could be extra fatigue. Um, it, I'd have to see if that was the case with Brian, if that was truly occurring, which I doubt. I just think Brian went too fast. And in fact, I know Brian went too fast because he was swimming right next to Sean Jefferson, who, by the way, showed up into town, who one of our former pros, right? For you
Yeah.
guys that are listening and haven't heard the name before, Sean uh, tried to make the Olympic team in 2016. And Sean is a good runner. He's a 351 collegiate NC2A 1500 meters, the mile, sorry,
Yeah.
the indoor mile, 356 runner, mile indoor runner. So they were swimming, he was swimming next to Sean. So I think he overswam his effort on the first 2 reps. He was going too quickly. Rather than swimming 141, he should have swum 150.
Yeah.
That's what he should have done. It's just difficult to do it sometimes. You get carried away by the excitement. Sean's in workout, whoever it may be, and you go too fast.
Well, you're a track guy. You think about sprinters or even sprinters in the pool. For them to not take massive amount of recovery between their repeats in practice is unheard of. I mean, they do a hundred or 200, and then they'll take 15 minutes recovery. They'll do drills for 15 minutes to sit around, they'll walk around, and then they'll do another one when they're completely recovered because that allows them to really push the limit within that one repeat and learn what it is to turn those legs over and feel that power without doing it under a ton of fatigue.
Right. And you're talking with that type of recovery, you're talking about super sprinters, right?
Exactly. And
Guys
it's
and
a
girls are running the 100 or the 200, or
total
maybe even the,
drastic example, right?
yes,
It's drastic, but it's the same concept. We don't want to go too hard because it's going to limit our ability to really press
correct.
the effort when it's time.
But even the 1500-meter runner, the 5K runner on the track is still, they do take more rest than we typically take in swimming. And there are reasons for that, because there's much more stress in running than there is in swimming. Okay. There's more structural stress and there's a need for some more recovery. But to your point, uh, especially in running, and this is one of the page of the book that swimming can take. Runners go race. When they go into the mile race, the 1500, it's about racing. They couldn't care less what time they did. In
Yeah.
fact, if you go back and you look at the 2016 Olympics, I think when uh, the U.S. guy won the 1500, I think he won in 3:48 or some ridiculously slow time. Uh,
But he won.
our gold medalist,
But he
but he
won.
won.
Yeah.
But he won. This Olympics, it took 3:27 or 3:28 to win, right? So that variance is crazy, but it's about winning because those guys have learned, they go into race and it's more tactical. Swimming, we're more about sort of even pacing. But as it relates to Brian, when we call upon 70%, and we're going to go over this later on in our session, right? When we call upon 70%, you got to go 70%. Really, really pull back so you can then really swim 5 seconds faster. Now, there's a reason we do, Jim, as you know, or I like to as the coach, give sets of multiple cycles. So this particular set was 6 times 150, and then we had some fast 25s. 6 times 150 again. We had fast 50s. 6 times 150 again. We had some fast 75s and 100s. But the reason for going 3 cycles through is because if you don't nail it the first cycle, you have a second chance to get it right.
Right.
That's why this coach likes in main sets repetition.
Repeat
so
it.
We go try it again. So in Brian's case, going 141, 141, 140, whatever it was in the first round. On the second round, oh, here's my chance to fix this. Back down, go really easy, super easy, and try to do it correctly.
Yeah, and that's, and then you got to look and you have to trust the coach too, right? We have plans why we're doing the specific workouts we're doing. It's not like we just say, oh, I think you're going to do this today. I think you're going to do that today. Because then if you look workout to workout, and I'm going to use my bike example from this morning, you look at it from an overview and you say it's an easy session, right? We had only 70%, 80% efforts. We were working on cadence. A lot of our athletes come to these Tuesday, Thursday rides and they want to work. We're used to doing sweet spot. We're used to doing threshold, VO2 max. I want to get off and my legs are shaking. They're used to that, right? I have them do a workout where, okay, it's 70 and 80%. Dial in, work on your TT position, work on our cadence, work on efficiency, work on your technique. You're still getting a good workout in. It's a 90 TSS over the course of 90 minutes, right? So it's a moderate effort workout, but they're used to going a lot harder. A lot of them, their first inclination, up arrow, hit up, make it harder, make it harder, make it harder. I'm not sweating enough. I'm not breathing hard enough. But looking at Thursday's workout, knowing I'm giving them threshold and VO2 max, I can't have them go too hard here because then that's going to limit their output on Thursday. Just like you varying the efforts on a Tuesday workout, if they go at that threshold every single set and they're not varying the efforts, they're not getting the most out of the fast workouts, they're also coming out of it super depleted from swimming too hard for 90 minutes straight. And that's going to affect their Wednesday workout, their Thursday workout, their Friday workout. So we're not only thinking of it from a performance standpoint, but from a recovery standpoint as to what it's going to do for the next workout and the next workout and how the workouts down the road are going to be executed because of this workout right here.
Well, we have a little bit more of a forest view rather than looking at the tree at that moment, right? We're dealing with the tree at that moment. You're pruning the tree at that moment, but we're still looking at the forest to be able to, keep the plan in place. But yes, completely agree with what you said. I think it's also important to recognize that there was some commentary on that I heard about regarding, well, Mary's doing the same workout as I am, and I am I'm an elite athlete. Why is Mary doing the same workout as I am?
Right, Mary is a 17-hour Ironman finisher, and I'm an 8-hour Ironman finisher. Why do we do the same thing?
Let's make the
Let's look at our subscription plan, right? Whether it's our rides in the morning, our subscription plan, swim workouts, blues workouts at the track. What we're talking about is applicable across the board. It's across the country, across the world, right?
Yes.
We go to a group workout. Why are we all doing 12 400s?
Right. Well, we're not to begin with. What we're doing I like that example. We're not doing 12 400s. We're doing 12 400s for level 1. And it may take, if it's swimming, it's a 5 minute, 4.5 minutes, depending on somebody's ability. Level 1's probably 4.5 to 5 minutes time. Level 2, they would go 350s. Level 3 in swimming, they'd go a 300. Level 4 would go a 250. So they're doing a different distance, but the duration of the time is the same. And then we're dosing out the effort, the prescriptive effort, what we would, what the demand is. If it's 12 of these, maybe we are going 70%, 75%, 80%, 85% for the first 4. And then we're going to repeat that 3 times through, as an example. I just made something up, right? So although Mary, in the example we're using, is doing 12 reps, she's doing a different distance. She also has, we're working on the same fitness. You have your aerobic fitness, your anaerobic fitness. We have all the different stimuluses we have to work on. Mary has to work on it too. as
Yeah.
you do, as the elite one. In fact, when I write our workouts, as you know, for our swim sessions, I use our elite athletes first as sort of the standard to start with. So as a main set, since you brought up 12 400s, although that's something we hardly ever do, but let's say I did write 12 400s. Somebody else in the same workout, in the same pool, 8 lanes wide, is going 12 250s. And we're all going in the same interval. So
Yep.
let's make it a 6-minute interval for easy management of the coach. That way the coach can scan the whole pool. And Mary's going 10 lengths. Johnny is going 12 lengths. Betty is going 14 lengths, and our elite athletes are going 16 lengths, right? So it is
Yeah.
the same session, but different distances, because Mary can't do the same distance. So the only variable is distance, not because you're an elite athlete means, or a better athlete means you should have a completely different workout than Mary, with one proviso. Mary's been in the sport for a while. Not if she's totally new and showed up on day one or even in the first
Yeah.
month. But
But even then, so let's take bike workouts, right? You look at bike workouts, the same thing. Like our Tuesday, Thursday workouts, not every person we coach does that exact workout. But a lot of athletes do it, whether, like I said, there's 17-hour Ironmans or 8-hour Ironmans. It's the athletes that are stronger that can put out more power, more FTP that we design the workout for. But then it's scaled down. Mary's not holding as high of an FTP as those elite athletes. Maybe one athlete for a threshold set can hold 350 times, 4 times 10 minutes. Mary can hold 100 for 4 times 10 minutes, but they're still doing their specific zones in the workout, right? So the elite
correct.
athlete will be able to push a higher effort, a higher watts per kilogram. They'll get, they'll get their side of the equation out of the workout, whereas we'll build the other side for Mary. It's like we don't forget about that athlete. It's just a scale, a spectrum based on the experience and the ability level of that athlete.
Do you think the 14-year-old kid, and I'm going to give swimming example because it's a sport I know the most as far as training and coaching. Do you think the 14-year-old kid is doing a different workout than Michael Phelps? If they're being coached by the same coach, they're doing a scale version of it. Okay, scale version, especially if they're training for the same event. Scale version. In fact, a world record just got broken a few months ago by a 14-year-old. It's one of the oldest records in swimming. The men's 1500 meter record was 15:30. It's 102 per 100 meters. Okay, 54
Wow.
seconds per 100 yards, by a 14-year-old
Jeez.
from 1976.
Wow.
Okay, just got broken earlier this year or last year, whenever it was. I was reading about this upcoming kid. The kid's doing the same
Well,
workouts as the best in the world.
and it all comes in. I'm just thinking about this as we're talking about this. It's a lot of ego. All this topics that we're talking about, it's a lot of ego. And I think that ego is driven by Strava. Is
Ah,
the
yes, yes,
detriment to
yes.
so many athletes. Number one, that Strava swim that we were speaking about earlier, it's going to be posted and people are going to look at it and say, "Oh my God, Brian averaged 120 for that entire swim. That's an amazing session." But he didn't execute it the way he should have executed it. If he would have executed it the way he should have executed it, maybe he would have said 140 was his average pace. And then it wouldn't be so sexy to everybody, right? Because his 140 is his pace. Oh man, like what is he slowing down? But he just executed the session. Same thing with this, what we're talking about with athletes thinking they can't do the same as a beginner athlete or as an athlete that's not as strong as them. All those rides pop up on Strava. And what's everybody else going to think if Joe Elite Pro is doing the
Yeah, yeah,
same
yeah.
workout as Mary, the 17-hour Ironman athlete? What's everybody else going to think about that? Right. I don't want anybody to think that I'm doing the same workout as this athlete, right? But it's not. It's completely scaled based on their specific ability level. And I think a lot of this comes back to Strava.
It's it's a good point. It's the reason. Apparently, I have a Strava account. Tells you how I don't go on Strava. Apparently, I have an account, and I swim, as you know, a couple times a week. And my Form goggle, there's a little plug for Form because I love the product. My Form goggle is hooked into my Strava account, so I must have, when I set it up, hit Strava. So I don't even know that, but it uploads to Strava. I have yet, since I've used those Form goggles now for over a year, gone to Strava to see
Hmm.
because I don't need to. It's sitting on my form goggle. I see my performance,
Yep.
but I don't want to go do the comparison thing because I could see myself. I was competitive at one time,
Yeah.
right? I could see myself starting to compare with, oh, wait a minute, he's that much better than I am, and maybe overcooking to the point that we're talking about. So I don't do it. Stay off of Strava.
But it's hard. I think it's an addiction, and it feeds the ego. And you have all these people tell you, "Oh, great job, great job." We look at the Saturday rides, and for so long, I've had trouble with our athletes. Exactly what we're talking about, just going out and turning the cranks. I say, okay, 60, 70% effort, just got out and move the legs. They come back and their average intensity factor over the course of a 4 hour ride is 80, 85%. Right? They're not only not
But you
adhering to
called
the
upon
plan.
what, 70%?
I said 60 to 70. You're just
Okay,
moving, getting used to the TT position. You're not overcooking yourself. And they're coming back, and we got an intensity factor of 80, 85%. Right. So they're out and racing a half Ironman effort for 3, 4 hours,
too much.
coming
Yes,
back. And then they're complaining that they're not making gains, they're not getting faster, they're tired all the time. Well, then you look back to these weekend rides and you say, well, you're just putting yourself behind the 8 ball because you're going out there and you're going too hard when it's supposed to be easy. I want to get the quality when it's time to get quality, get the foundation when it's time to get foundation, but you're not adhering to the plan. I'm looking 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 2 months, 3 months down the road, weeks, months down the road, but you're not doing it. You're not able to make the gains that you're capable of making because you're overcooking this workout. You're going into the next week fatigued. You're spinning your wheels through those workouts. You're not able to push to that next level. You're going into the next weekend competing again with all your, testosterone ego driven teammates. That cycle just keeps repeating, 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 and it comes back to Strava. Like, what am I going to look at? What am I going to look like if I soft pedal, or quote unquote soft pedal, for 4 or 5 hours? What's everybody going to think about my power output? And if I'm just going out there turning the cranks, I got to go out there and race these weekend rides.
to your point, if there's you guys that are listening, if you have a prescription to follow and you're not following it, you do need to talk to your coach about it, okay? And have a discussion with him or her as to why you're not following it, especially if you're not. Um, the way that we solve problems, and I can't recall, Jim, if we've done this on a prior podcast, but in case we haven't, and those who are maybe now listening for the first time, it's worth discussing again. I remember many years ago, Jim, at one of our swim workouts, a guy by the name of Eric, let's leave last name nameless for now, uh, came and asked my opinion of a particular coach. And this is a high performance coach he was asking about. And Eric was being coached by a different high performance coach, right? And he says, Gerry, what do you think about such and such? And before I let the words out of my mouth, I said, let me back up for a moment. And I go, Eric, why are you asking about such and such? He goes, well, I just wanted your opinion before I go with him. I said, but you're with this other coach, right? Have you spoken to your other coach about the problem? Well, and before he could answer, I said, Eric, you're married. Yes. I said, we all have disagreements with our wives at times, right? Yes, sure. I said, do you go start dating Mary on the side before you talk to your wife? I mean, how do you fix the problem, right? And he says, I get it. I get it. I said, you got to go to your coach. You need to talk about the problem and you need to work through it first. And then after multiple times, if there's no solving of the problem, then of course you can come to me and ask me about some other coach. But I'm not going to give you an opinion on this other coach because I think you got to go back to your coach and figure out what the problem is. So
Yep.
there are ways to solve, and you need to have the best foundation relationships with your coaches. That's really what it's about. And in
Yeah.
fact, as you know
Communication.
this, at one time, we couldn't get, you know this because we talked about it frequently. We were getting scores and scores, and even up into probably the low hundreds of calls to be coached by the who's who of pro athletes all over the world, right? And
Yep.
especially in the swim. And my motto was, you have to let your coach know. And the ones who did not want their coaches to know that they were contacting me, I said, I'm sorry, I can't coach you. You have to let your coach know. There's a
Yep.
reason you're doing this, and your coach needs to know why first. So that's
Yep.
professionalism.
Yeah, and it's about communication. If there's something that you don't understand or you need clarification on, it's having that communication, having the comfort with that coach. The coach should be like a family member to you, and that you can communicate with them and share everything on your mind. Because if it's something on your mind and you don't bring it up, it's going to start digging, 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 and there's going to be an animosity, and all of a sudden that relationship's going to fall apart. You're going to stop respecting the coach. You're going to stop doing the work. You're going to stop making the gains that you should be making because you're not following that progression. Hopefully, that coach has an outline for you, a progression, and they have your best interest at heart. If you're not taking advantage of that and you're not communicating any concerns you have or positive experiences you have with that coach, things you agree with, you're missing out on the whole coach athlete relationship and the possibilities as to where that can grow too.
And how many athletes do we have that we've coached them swimming, and they may have coached themselves biking and running. Then they go get a triathlon coach, and their triathlon coach says, "You have to do all three under me, or you can't be with me." And
Yeah.
then they leave us, and they go to that coach. In fact, somebody comes to my mind right now as I'm saying this, and then they come back 2 or 3 years later because their swim blows up by 4 or 5 or 6 minutes, right? So part of this is the coaching side of being professional also, but the athlete has a big portion in this to also be professional about how they handle things,
Yep.
their relationships.
Yep. Well, I got another question for you from Megan on Facebook. She's writing in. I'm not sure who wrote this question, but we're talking about efforts in swimming, in racing specifically. How do you deal with the mentality of pacing yourself correctly when you're in a race setting? How do you settle yourself down and not be a crazy maniac for half the swim and then die out the rest of the swim? I think they're saying.
Well, that's easy, isn't it? That's what we practice in workouts. I mean, if you're
Yep.
attending your workouts and you are following the prescription, especially at Tower 26, we have our workouts, especially now, June phase 5, our racing phase, our workouts are tailored specifically to how to how to warm up for your race. Once you hit the start line, what to do. Once the gun goes off, what to do next. It's broken out over the first, especially the first 5 minutes. Every single step you have to take in the first 5 minutes of your race. And if there's any place to overcook it, that's when you do it. And there are reasons for doing that. So follow the prescription that you're being taught to do.
Yep.
And of course, if you're undertrained, then we have a problem, because if you're overcooking something and you're undertrained, then the negative impact is going to be more significant. But that's dealt with in proper execution of training sessions.
How do you keep the reins on from a mental standpoint though? Like you want to just you want to go hard, but how do you tone it down and be like, okay, I know I'm not going to overcook it. What do you say to yourself to keep the reins on? Is it
Well,
keep the reins on? Like what do you think?
well, you have to know. We talk about you have to marry an effort to a time to a feeling. Okay, in workouts. So when you're swimming, and this is why we do these various efforts, as we're talking about with Brian, 70%, 75%, 80, 85%. You need to know when you're swimming, and we could make this for running or riding, but in this case, we're talking about Brian and swimming and this question. If you're at 80% effort and you're doing 150s in this example as earlier, you know an 80% yields a certain time, 1 minute and 40 seconds. And it felt a certain way. So you learn what that feeling is to that time. Then you learn what the feeling is for 85%. You learn what it is at 90% or 70%. So when you get into the race, you know the feeling you need to have. In fact, Rachel McBride comes to my mind, who was the best athlete at this. Rachel, who is a non-swimmer, did not swim competitively prior, right? Was a very good swimmer in triathlon, in half Ironman and Ironman racing, about a 58 minutes an hour Ironman female pro. Came with us and eventually swam 50 minutes, right?
Yep.
And Rachel was swimming, and I think it was Ironman Canada, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
You might remember.
Whistler, right?
Okay.
Yep.
And she was in the field was 2 or 3 other elite women swimmers, very good triathletes, pro triathletes, but elite swimmers. And she was swimming with them and was like ecstatic that she was with them. And then she said, wait a minute, I'm not at my 80 to 85% effort here. I'm below this. And she had the confidence to know what her pacing needs to be. And in this case, this is like, in her case, it was undercooking. She goes, I can go faster than this.
Yeah.
And she made a move, broke away from these girls, ended up swimming 50 minutes, okay, and beating in the swim segment, 2 very notable names.
Yeah.
So that's the going harder than you need to, because you know the effort, what it feels like. So it's a feeling. Learn the feeling and workout, execute the feeling and race day. Don't change what are you going to do on race day if you haven't been doing it in workout? That is the biggest mistake that we can make in a race.
And that's, bring it to race or any, pro athlete out there. I look at my ice hockey career, and we're bringing it back to what we were talking about earlier with the efforts. Is just having the confidence that you're fast, right? You're fast. You don't have to go play. You don't have to go. I'm bringing it back. I'm coming off that topic right now, but you don't have to go out there and prove it to anybody. When it's on the line, you're going to go out there and you're going to execute. You don't have to go in session after session after session and prove to everybody else that you're fast. Rach is a perfect example. Session after session after session, exactly what we outlined: swim, bike, run. Rach goes and executes it to a T. Rach is not trying to prove to anybody how fast, when it's on the line, how fast the performance is going to be. And that's professional athletes across the board, right? You look at the guys I train with, the NFL players at the gym over here, right? When it's time to go easy, they're just lollygagging around. But when it's time to put the hammer down, it's time to put the hammer down. It's just having confidence, executing, knowing when you toe the line, when it's time to really put the hammer down, it's going to be there. You don't have to prove it
Yes.
to anybody else.
This is a good point you're bringing up. And it's also about knowing when to put the hammer down. And you have to be able to do that also when your coach calls upon it. Here's an example that happened about a month ago at one of our beach workouts. And this irked me. We were doing it irked me as a coach because here's the ego talking, Jim. I don't know if there are any athletes that we coach that knows more than I know about coaching and coaching in general or swimming. Okay. I don't think there are any. I'm not saying there are not other coaches out there. There are many, but of the athletes we coach, there are none. We have a prescriptive workout, and it's our beach session, and we only do this session 2 or 3 times during the season. It is a hard session, and we do a 10-minute-ish warm up, a couple of other warm up things, and then the session is 90 seconds out. You start on the beach, you run in, and you got to get through the surf line. It's 90 seconds out. Fairly high intent. Well, we did it in progressive effort, this particular set. But 90 seconds out, you rest 30, and then you swim back in 90 seconds. So it's basically a 3-minute effort total, right? And then you recover on the beach. And we do that 4 reps through. And then we have about 8 minutes of recovery. And we do that whole thing 3 cycles through. Okay. So it's basically 3-minute swim bouts broken up into 90 seconds. And that particular day, Jim, we had big in fact, were you at that workout?
The one workout I was at, it was a triple nap day. I had to take 3 naps after this workout.
Okay.
It's a workout when I take three naps. I usually only take 2. I took 3 naps.
This was a power session. Okay.
It was really depleting. I mean,
on building in race takeout speed, proper navigation, high frequency of sighting, positioning. There's a whole bunch of skills being built in here. And we happened to have surf that day. We had 3 to 4 foot surf, which may not sound big, but 3 to 4 foot surf can yield 5, 6, 7, 8 foot faces at times. So it was challenging. And when you have surf that has some power to it, it's a heavier tax. This was a hard session. If we had to scale this session 1 to 10, this would be up in the 8s and 9s, right?
Yeah.
A group of athletes peeled off on their own and just went and did their normal 30, 40-minute swim doing whatever they were doing. And these are, I would consider these elite athletes, elite age group athletes. And they felt that the session was low value and went off and did what they thought they needed to be doing. If you think you need to be doing what you're doing, then don't come to a freaking workout that I'm coaching. Just go do it on your own. Just, go somewhere else.
Well, we know from all our pool sessions, our athletes do what's prescribed, right? It's not a thing where you just put on your fins, swim with your fins if you want to swim with your fins, pull on your buoy whenever you want to put on your buoy. It's we say it, you do it, you go out there and execute. And why is it any different at the beach?
Well, and I get it. This is a hard session, but we don't know what's going to show up. It's not swimming at a swim meet in a pool or running on a track, okay, or riding a track bike race. Open water swim conditions have such incredible variances, or can have such incredible variances, right? From easy, super silky, easy conditions to very, very demanding conditions. So when you have an opportunity to train in demanding conditions and that type of workout, that workout is, I believe, our highest value workout of the entire season.
And well, I always talk about on our bike workouts, I talk about tools in our toolbox, right? It's like we can all of us can go out there and ride 70% for 5 hours. Any athlete who's trained can go ride an Ironman at 70% and, get off and feel okay if you've done the right volume. but are you working the tools in your toolbox, right? You could have everybody go out and swim a low value session where they're just going out to the buoy and back for an hour with no pace changes. But throwing in a session like this is working the tools in the toolbox, your ability to get through the waves, to get that race start, that high heart rate into the horizontal position, get on the effort, turn the arms over, work the power in the dynamic environment of open water. You're working all these tools. And by skipping out on that, just doing that low value, I'm just going to swim at 60, 70% for an hour. It's exactly what we were talking about before. It's just spinning your wheels and not getting outside of that comfort zone where you're really learning to be faster and stronger in the water.
And at a minimum, what you need to do, let's talk about what we're trying to accomplish here. We're trying to accomplish teaching an athlete to follow the prescription, precisely follow it, and or collaborate with your coach. There was no collaboration here. There was just go off on your own and do your own session that you choose to do. So there's no coach collaboration. Perhaps there's a reason for these athletes going off and doing what they chose to do, but it certainly wasn't communicated to this coach. And that's not something that you want, because that starts deteriorating relationships. Fortunately, I don't see these athletes often enough because they're just at beach sessions, but it's not ideal. It's not ideal for performance, for training, whatever it may be.
You're
And
right.
it
I mean,
may,
you're right though, because I had a few athletes who did go swim on their own, who have calf issues, ankle issues, and they couldn't go in and out of the water. I said, okay, thank you for communicating with me. But
but
as
what
long as as long as they communicate it.
and some of them did that in that session. And what did we do? We had them start at knee deep water,
Right.
so they didn't have to run in or run back up.
Exactly. We
So
adjusted and got the value out of the session.
exactly. When I raced, and we don't talk about me, as you know, but when I raced, this was one of my highest value sessions,
Yeah.
and I won a lot of freaking races.
But we shouldn't, you always want to communicate the value of it. And now, next time they do it, they'll respect it. Maybe they just didn't respect it, but that's not the time after the fact. Maybe say, hey, can you explain? Can we go into the details of this and how it's going to benefit us? Maybe bring it up at the time. Might be a little uncomfortable, but it's good. Us as coaches, we learn from it and maybe we
Yeah.
communicate it next time. Who knows? Maybe that might be an answer. But in my world, somebody doesn't listen to what I'm saying. Put your shoes on and go run. Get out of my pool. Get out of my ocean.
Well, typically the athlete doesn't usually know more than the coach, so your job should be to communicate with your coach if there's
Exactly.
a disagreement or different opinion, because that's what collaboration's about. But you have to earn the right to do that, and that comes with mutual respect. It comes with time. It comes with also building up your using your word, your athletic toolbox, so you then can have that discussion.
Right. Well, I think we kind of already went over. We hit a lot here. Is there anything we want to talk on this main set? Main
No,
topic. I like to call
no,
it the main set. I think we should call our main topic our main set.
I like it. Good.
Yeah. So in the main set, anything else? We kind of went over the workout of the episode. We can show it again and go over it quickly. I don't know if people really absorbed it, but do you want to go over? I mean, this is the workout of the episode. We'll
Sure,
open
let's
this
make
up.
it quickly.
You
So we
can
got the
go to
6 swims.
you can go to coaching.tower26.com. We're going to open this up so you guys can go execute it. You can follow along. All you have to do is start an account for free. It'll be open. You can see it. And yeah, we can just take it from there. What is it, Jer?
Yeah, we had six reps, right? Of whatever the distance was prescribed. In this case today, we're talking about 150s. And those were 2 at 70 to 75%, 2 at 80, 75 to 80%, 2 at 80 to 85%. So that was sort of the range of effort. 2, 2, 2, 2, 6 total, 20, 30 seconds rest between each. And then we took some additional rest, by the way, Jim, at the completion of the 6th one. And then we went into approximately 6 minutes of fast 25s. It was 12:25s or 10:08, depending on the level of the athlete. We're showing you guys a screenshot here of what our level 1 athletes did. But it was something that took about 6 minutes. And this is at higher intensity, 90%-ish output. 20 seconds rest between those 25s. Took a big break, and then we repeated this 3 cycles through. But what changed on the 3 cycles through, the 25s became 50s on round 2. That 90% effort the distance went up to 50s. We only did 6 of them, and it still took about 12 minutes, 10 minutes to do ish. I'm sorry, 6 minutes to do, because that was the duration of the intensive portion. So it was 650s in a minute for the faster group. Another group did 550s on 110 and 115, and some did 4 of them on 130, as an example, right? But they were still at that 90%. And then we did the final round where 6 more 150s, and then 3 times 100, or I actually changed that to 4 times 75 for a different group that we did. But the distance went up, but the intensity stayed the same. This is not an easy session. It's not a totally demanding session, but to execute it well, you need to put the reins on. And the example I like to use, Jim, if anyone hasn't seen a horse race, you should look at a horse race. And go pull up any horse race on YouTube, and you will notice the moment the gates open and the horses are out of the gates, the first thing the jockeys are doing is, Jim,
Keeping the reins on, pulling them
keeping
back.
the reins on the horses and pulling them back because they just want to go. They just want to race. And we have to have our governor on those first 2 reps. And then you release the reins. You soften up the governor in the next 2, and then you can whip the horse at the end of the race like the jockeys do to get the higher performance. So that's how we like to lay these out.
That's it. Follow the demands and you'll finish strong. Go out too strong and you're going to limp over the finish line. And that's the takeaway for any race, right? It's like, be smart, race smart. It's not all about racing hard, race smart. And then you can race hard eventually as the race goes on. All right. So go to coaching.tower26.com. We'll open that one up and we're looking forward to you guys giving us some feedback. Remember, email me, Jim@tower26.com. Give me some questions. Give me some feedback on the workout. Like I said, if you want me to say happy birthday to your dog, your cat, I can bring that up on the next episode. Jim@tower26.com. We got that back up. We got a question. Coach Jason asked a question. I believe it was a leading question. He's on Facebook. He asked the question. And if we weren't running out of times, I'd have Jason come on. But he said, when athletes go above and beyond during a workout, which you've seen Coach Jason do in the water, I'm sure a couple times in the last year, he's been doing your workouts up in Santa Barbara. When athletes go above and beyond, they go too hard in a workout, should coaches update the next workouts based on the overshooting of that specific workout?
I'm going to let you answer that. I have my
Yes,
opinion.
please let me answer. Yes. My job as a coach is to adjust based on what's going on in that specific workout. So an athlete is going too hard on one specific workout, and I have a very demanding workout the next day, and I know that's not going to be achieved because our athlete is beating themselves down in this specific session. I have to change that next day's workout. Maybe I'll give the day off. Maybe I'll bring it down to zone 1, zone 2 work, but I have to allow for more recovery after that deep dig that they gave when they weren't supposed to give, so we can get more out of the session when I prescribe it in the future. But it's not going to be achieved because of the fatigue built in that specific session. Use Brian as an example. Can I just use Brian quickly? Brian, I have him doing an easy swim on Tuesday because in the past, he was trying to go hard in the water Tuesday, open water swim Wednesday, go hard Thursday, take Friday off from swimming, then go hard again Saturday. So we have him now varying his efforts. Tuesday, he's doing a lot of pulling and he's going to drop himself down a lane. Wednesday, he's swimming in his wetsuit in open water. Thursday's his quality session. And then maybe he's going to swim on Saturdays. And if he does, we're going to scale it back again. But if I look at that Saturday or that Tuesday swim and he's pushed way too hard and he has a TSS of 90 for a 60-minute workout, then I got to talk to him and say, okay, Wednesday's not going to be the same. We got to back down your run session. We got to maybe not go to the ocean, or if you're going to go to the ocean, stay a little shorter, or go with group 3 instead of group 2. Everything has to be in constant motion based on what's going on, session to session to session. So that's my long answer. What were you going to say?
Well, to your point, to punctuate that, it is even more difficult and more challenging in a multi-sport event, which is triathlon. You have 3 sports. So if you overcook a training session in one sport and you still have to come back and there's another sport to do later that day or 2 other sports to do later that day, it's difficult. It's a little easier in single sport to overcook a session and then sort of manage through carefully, but in multi-sport, it's more challenging. So yes, you've got to make an adjustment.
That's right. I had a question for you that I want to talk about because I have, a lot of athletes are doing the swim video analysis with Coach Jack, right? They do the swim video analysis, and oftentimes they're not swimming with their wetsuit on. They're swimming in the pool, right? So they're giving tips on how to swim better with no wetsuit on. Then they go to a race or they swim with their wetsuit on. Do you find that we need to think differently as to how that athlete's swimming with the wetsuit on as opposed to without the wetsuit on? Or do you think we should start thinking about adding in some part of the swim video analysis where they don't have the wetsuit on and they have the wetsuit on? What's your thoughts on this?
I think it's a good question. What do we train the athlete? It's a great question, and the answer would be the simplest answer is do both, right?
Right.
Video analysis and or technique review with and without your wetsuit. The problem is they might be a time constraint, they may be a number of things. So what do you have to then train for? What are we solving for? We're solving for the lowest common denominator problem. And the lowest common denominator problem is the flaws that are going to occur without a wetsuit, because we have less flaws with a wetsuit on. The tautness gets managed with a wetsuit on. Body position gets managed with a wetsuit on. So those flaws are going to go away. So it's easy with a wetsuit on, right? So it's better if you were to only select one, select swimming without your wetsuit, because you're going to get to a race on an event day, they're going to say it's 76.9. No wetsuits.
Yeah.
Be prepared to race, no wetsuits. So take your video analysis without a wetsuit. Then if you have an opportunity, then you could do it with a wetsuit.
And get the wetsuit. When you get the wetsuit on and you the things you've been practicing, this is why we need to practice in that wetsuit frequently going into race day, because maybe the things you've been working on without the wetsuit on might be so I'll tell you why I'm thinking about this, and I bring this up, and this might be a question. We'll bring Jack on, we'll talk to him about it. I had an athlete race last weekend, and he had the swim video analysis, and his legs weren't at the top. So Jack said, bend your knees a little more when you kick, right? Your legs are too straight, right? So then he took that and he went and raced, and he put a wetsuit on, and he was bending his knees a little more when he kicked, and he cramped in his right hamstring when he went and got on the bike, right? So because he was bending his knees a little more with the wetsuit on and the added resistance that neoprene provides, I think it was and I don't know about this, I can talk to Jack about this, it was adding a little more stress to that hamstring. His legs were already at the top because of the buoyancy of the wetsuit, so he didn't really need to bend his knees so much. But because that extra stress of the neoprene on the hamstring, and he was focusing on bending the knee to kick, it caused the hamstring to overwork and cramp when he got on the bike. So my point is, if you're gonna wear a wetsuit in racing, practice in the wetsuit occasionally, just to know, hey, if I'm trying to fix something without the wetsuit on, what does it feel like when I put the wetsuit on, and do I have to change things a little bit based on that feel?
Agreed. Yes. So
thank you.
Good point.
Thank you.
Good point.
Okay. Good.
Do we have time, or we
have
short
time
here?
We have time. We're only at 56 minutes, so we got time.
So I'll try to make this quickly. So I got a number of questions about this further explanation. So I need crack mathematician Megan, who's in the background there, to tell me if I'm correct on this. I think I'm correct, but
I got her on the ones and twos. So Meg, get ready to type. Get ready to type, because I'm here. I got her.
I use this example about negative currents, and some folks can't believe that this was the case. So I'm going to go over one more time. If an athlete, let's tier it: level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. Our athletes, and let's go. Level 1 is world class athlete. 15 minutes for a mile, Megan. That's a minute per 100 meters, right? A 15-minute athlete would take an hour to swim 4 miles. Did I do that math right, Jim? If they're swimming 15 minutes per mile.
Yes, you got it. Perfect.
15 times 4 is 60, right?
Okay. For that. I got the calculator right here.
Okay. Now they're swimming in a current of minus 1 mile an hour. Minus 1. So they're going at 4 effort. They have a minus 1, so their net is 3.
Right.
So they're swimming at 3 miles an hour.
20 minute per mile, right.
So now it takes them an hour and 20 minutes, right?
To go 4, right.
So they're 33% slower.
Yes.
Am I correct on the math?
Megan
it took them 20 minutes more.
Yes.
They were an hour. It's 33% slower. The person that's a 3-minute per mile swimmer, they normally swim 20-minute speed per mile, which is very fast in triathlon. 3 minutes. Okay. They'd swim 3 miles in an hour. I'm just using the hour as an example. 3 miles in an hour. And if they have a negative 1 mile an hour current, their net is 2 miles per hour, right?
Right.
Okay. So it's taking them, so their 1 hour swim is now going to take them an hour and a half.
Yep.
So they're 50% slower with just that negative 1 mile.
Megan says yes.
Okay. All right. So, and then the person that's swimming 30 minutes per mile. Right? Are we going? It would take them
30 minutes. Yes.
They would swim 2 miles in an hour.
Yes.
Yep.
2 miles an hour. Right.
Yep. They'd swim 2 miles in that hour. And if they had a negative 1 mile an hour, so now their net is 1 mile speed, it's going to take him 2 hours to cover that distance of 2 miles. Right.
Right. Yes.
So that's 100% slower. Did I nail that?
100% slower. You are
100% slower.
Baby.
Okay.
Got it.
And then the person that swims at 1 mile per hour, and they're in a negative 1 mile per hour.
They're not going anywhere.
It's infinite. They can't finish. It's an infinite performance.
Yeah.
Or negative. Yeah. So That is the math. The depreciation is that great. Meaning, if you are slower swimmers, and the purpose of this was to talking about the Olympics, slower swimmers are impacted heavily in negative currents, whereas they're not impacted anywhere near in positive currents. So the good swimmer can't get ahead very much in positive currents, but the good swimmers just destroy slower swimmers in negative currents. And that was the example I gave. I wanted it to be an extreme example, but it is extreme. The 1 mile an hour swimmer, they never
Yeah.
finish in a negative 1 mile an hour current.
And the same goes for the bike. You're going into a
Yes.
headwind. The stronger athletes push harder where the course slows down. You go into a headwind, sure they're going to slow down, but that slowdown is a lot less than that weaker cyclist who doesn't have the muscular strength, the muscular endurance to push into that headwind, and they end up not going very far or not going very fast because that wind is affecting them more so. So, same example. I love it. So
So
work
the
on your
example was
muscle.
just to show the delta, how wide it gets with negative currents, and why the better swimmer, the technically stronger and the more powerful swimmer, has such an advantage in negative currents versus if it's a positive current, everyone's clustered together more.
Yeah. Yep. Same with the tailwind, right? It's hard to get away from an athlete on the bike with
Yep,
the tailwind.
exactly.
So yeah, really good point there. Jared, what are we going to talk about next episode? What do we got?
Got a lot to talk about. I mean, I'm sure we'll touch on the World Championships a little bit since that's coming up
Women's
this
World
weekend.
Championship
Yep.
in Nice this weekend. We got a bunch of Tower 26 athletes towing the line. We want to get these things regular. I'm driving to the airport. I'm just seeing all these cars on the roadways. Everybody's got the radio on. Everybody's listening to the podcast. Brother, we need content. We're going to keep the content coming out because we know you're sitting in traffic. We want you to be able to listen to some educational stuff. And when people practicing their swim stroke while they're in the car, Jared, there's opportunity here. We got to keep these things cranking.
Well, you kept me awake for this hour. Thank you.
I tried to keep you on edge. Remember, questions, Jim at tower26.com. I got a birthday note. Arlene wants to say happy birthday to Tato, her dog. So, Arlene, happy birthday to Tato. You want to say happy birthday to Tato?
Happy birthday, Tato.
Okay, Tato's
Tell
birthday.
Arlene she only got the right to get that on here because she did show up at a workout last week.
Hey, she's back in full force. So it's exciting to have her back on. We look forward to all the stuff we have coming your way. I have another podcast. We're doing the build in to the 70.3 World Championships at Taupo, New Zealand, December 14th and 15th. I got a new friend, Jer, Rob Dallimore. He's in Auckland, New Zealand. He's a coach. He had this idea. Let's do this build. It's a 10 podcast series. We're calling it Conquer the Course. And it's just prepping athletes for that race mid-December, the World Championships, 70.3 World Championships. I'd like to get Rob on this show and let's get a little New Zealand flair on this show. What
I
do you
love
think?
the name, Conquer the Course. That's great.
All up here.
10 episodes. 10 episodes. That's a
They're
lot
about
of
30,
episodes.
30 minutes. We're going to have some athletes. We already talked about swim, bike, run. We're 3 episodes in. We're going to have some athletes who had success on the course. Maybe a swim expert wants to come on. Hint.
Yeah, well,
Hint.
let's see if we can find one, right?
A swim expert wants to come
Yeah,
on and talk
there you
about
go.
some success at World Championship events. So follow along with that. We'll get Rob on here. We'll introduce him, and he's a good contact to have in New Zealand. Guy knows everybody. So look forward
Excellent.
to spreading the word on that. Anything else from you, Jer?
No, appreciate your help and time, Jim. Thank you.
Hey, it's a lot of fun, and keep those questions coming. We'll open that workout for you guys, coaching.tower26.com. For Jerry Rodriguez, Jim Lubinsky, the Tower 26 Be Race Ready podcast. Thanks for joining, everybody.